Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. So there have been a lot of book to screen adaptations releasing lately, and I wanted to talk about all the ones that I watched, that I binged in 2022. I watched a bunch of movies, a bunch of shows that were based on books. There's a ton of YA ones, a couple romances here and there, but YA has just been popping lately, especially the adaptations of some of the older YA books that I used to love reading. So here I am, I'm going to talk about all the movie and TV show adaptations that I watched this year. I'm gonna give my thoughts, give my ratings. I'll let you know which ones were the worst ones and the best ones for me. If you watched any of these ones, please let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear them. Most of the ones that I'll be talking about were new releases. There's probably like 2 that came out before this year, but let's just get started. I'm gonna start off with the adaptation that I was most excited about. It's one of the young adult books that I used to be obsessed with reading back when I was a teenager, and 13-year-old me was dying inside when I saw that this was coming. It's The Summer I Turned Pretty, based on the same book by Jenny Han. This is the first book, the first season in the whole summer series, and I freaking loved this show. I watched it in I think 2 days. I watched it with my cousin who was also obsessed with these books, and oh my god, it was such good teenage messy angst. I loved it. At first I wasn't entirely sold on, the characters, on the actors portraying these characters, but the more I watched, the more I was completely hooked on how they portrayed Belly and Conrad and Jeremiah. It was just so wonderful seeing this book that I loved reading as a teen become this big TV show. I mean, I know Jenny Han had her To All the Boys adaptation, but I never read those books, so I wasn't like insanely hyped as I was for the summer series, the summer adaptations. But I thought they did such a great job with this adaptation. It stuck fairly close to the book material as far as I can remember. It's been, what, 10 years since I last read The Summer I Turned Pretty? Probably more than that, to be honest, but I thought they did great. Except for the whole debutante ball. That wasn't in the books, I don't think, but I thought it was still fun. I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan, but that soundtrack was fantastic. They picked some good Taylor Swift songs. The last episode had me screaming, like that dance. Oh my gosh. So I love this one. This is easily one of my favorite adaptations that I watched this year. 5 full stars for this one. It felt like I was a teenager all over again while I was watching it. And I mean, I'm always and forever team Conrad. And the guy who played Conrad played his moody ass so well. And like I said, this is just the first book, so hopefully we do get 2 more seasons. I believe we are, but I'm so excited. I can't wait for more, especially the last one, because the 3rd book was my absolute favorite. Jenny Han got so lucky with all her adaptations because everyone who worked on this series, the To All the Boys series, they did a wonderful job. It could have been so cringy like some of the other shows, the other movies that I watched that I'll get into in a little bit, but it was kind of the perfect summer teenage romance. Another summer romance that I ended up watching, I also got to go to the Netflix premiere in LA. That was a lot of fun. It's Along for the Ride, which was a book by Sarah Dessen, who I also used to read so much growing up. And this is one of the better Sarah Dessen books that I remember reading, but my all-time favorite of hers was The Truth About Forever. If they ever adapted that, I would perish. But no, they went with this summer romance about a girl who doesn't know how to bike and learns how to bike from her love interest, and all this other teenage family drama happens, of course. But I like this one. I'm giving it a generous 4 stars. It's more like 3.5. It was fun to watch, but I can't say that I really loved it, especially not as much as The Summer Turned Pretty. I wasn't quite as into the actors here, but I do think this storyline fell more in line with the actual book. But I really don't have much to say about this one. It's great to watch one time, but I would never really watch it again. But if you do like Sarah Dessen, if you grew up on Sarah Dessen, I would definitely watch this one just for the nostalgia. It wasn't the best adaptation, but I still did have fun with it. Moving on to 2 movies, 2 sequels that are not young adult at all. It's the 2nd and 3rd movies in the 365 Days series. Movie 2 is called 365 Days This Day, and movie 3 is called The Next 365 Days. I actually had high hopes for these because as insane as the first movie was, I was highly entertained by it and I had so much fun watching it. Like that movie, oh my god, it was crazy, but I really liked it. I do have a review of it, both the first movie and the second movie, on my channel, so if you need like a recap on what happens, you can go watch those. But this sequel, the second movie, was quite disappointing. I have to give it 2 stars. I didn't really enjoy myself when I was watching it. It was very boring because it was basically a 2-hour long music video. The same can definitely be said about the third movie. These were both 2-hour long music videos. The movies were nothing but montages, like just no dialogue, all music, these characters doing whatever they're doing, and no plot. I mean, they tried, I guess, but things just got too silly and over the top and dramatic that it just wasn't fun anymore. They also introduced a third guy to add to this little love triangle thing going on between Laura and Massimo. The third guy's name is Nacho, which I just cannot get into. Even worse, surprisingly, like if I gave 2 stars to the second movie, I have to give the third movie 1 star. It was absolutely horrid. It was genuinely a struggle to get through. I think halfway through the third movie I had to speed it up to whatever the highest watching option is on Netflix. I couldn't deal with it anymore. And of course it just had to end on another cliffhanger with Laura still not deciding on who she should pick between Massimo and Nacho. I think in the book she chooses Nacho. I'm not 100% sure, but the books themselves are wild. I tried reading the first one. That was a no-go. But yeah, that third movie was god awful. If you love the first movie, I would not try watching the other 2 unless you just really want some messy, silly drama with a ton of sex. I mean, the steam was still hot, but after a while it's like, okay, I kind of want a little bit more plot, please. But these were just pretty disappointing. I will say, I do hope that we do get more mafia romance adaptations because that would be so much fun, and there are so many options to choose from. I don't know why they went with the 365 Day series, but hopefully it's an opening for producers to choose from other good mafia romances because they are out there. I also watched The Time Traveler's Wife on HBO. This is a new series. I'm pretty sure there was a movie years ago, but now they have a new series with Theo James, and not even Theo James could save it for me because I didn't really like it. I give it 2 stars. I just couldn't stand the main characters. They were so annoying to watch. They were both completely unlikable for me, which sucks because, again, Theo James and his bare butt. It also took me 30 minutes to realize where I saw the main actress from, which is Game of Thrones. I haven't read the book, but I did know the gist of what the story was about just because of that previous movie. But for a quick summary, it's about this married couple. The husband is a time traveler. He's been a time traveler since he was a child, and the wife always knew that she would be marrying him because he visited her as an adult when she was younger. It was very wholesome, no grooming or anything, but when they both become adults, when they actually meet in their present timelines while they were in college, they are just the most annoying characters ever. It was like he's a player who doesn't care about anything or anyone, and she is just like, yeah, okay, we're actually gonna get married, so let's get together. I was a little bit more invested in the future when the main characters are married and they're struggling with infertility. That part at least was a little bit more interesting. And the even more annoying thing is that the series ended on a cliffhanger. Like, you can kind of assume what's gonna happen next, but we don't actually get it. So it ends on a cliffhanger, and unfortunately or fortunately, we are not getting a second season. I probably would have watched it if it did get renewed, but it didn't. I can't say that I'm surprised by this. There was no chemistry between the main characters, the main actors. So my rating for this one is 2 stars. Another young adult adaptation that I watched was Hello, Goodbye, and Everything in Between. This was based on the book by Jennifer E. Smith. I have not read this book, but I've read some other books from Jennifer E. Smith. So I went into this one blind and it was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I'm giving it 3 stars. It was kind of boring at some parts and it was very strangely paced. Like by the time that we got to the ending, it felt more like we were in the middle of a movie. Barely anything happened and there was still so much to happen, but no, it was the ending. I do like Jordan Fisher, but the main actors together in this movie just weren't all that exciting. It's sort of like a second chance romance. The main characters, they're in high school, they're about to go to college, so the girl decides to break up with the guy because she doesn't think that they can do the long distance thing or the college relationship thing, whatever it was. And I thought the storyline was a little boring. It just wasn't anything special or unique. And the actors weren't enough to save it either. So this one, it's just very average. It's the type of movie that you would have playing in the background. You're not really paying that much attention to it, but you want to still say that you watched it. The next adaptation that I watched is Partner Track on Netflix. This is a book by Helen Wan. I did not read it. I honestly had never even heard of it until I got invited to watch it, and I did have high hopes for it. I mean, an Asian, female Asian lead, I'm always excited about that. But I am so sorry to Arden Cho, but she was not the best in this series. Her acting felt very forced, and it did come across as cringy sometimes. The supporting cast was great, I will say, but I just could not get into the acting here, and the show did suffer a little bit because of it. I'm giving it like 3.5 stars. It was still interesting and fun, and I did love the main character's best friends. They definitely saved the show for me, but the whole love triangle thing I wasn't a huge fan of just because I felt like she chose the wrong guy. I'm still not really sure why she chose the guy that she chose at the end, especially when, to no one's surprise, he ended up betraying her. So the whole romance storyline, not my favorite, but I did have fun with the whole lawyer firm. We get to focus on the 2 best friends who also work at the same law firm, and they have their own drama that was a lot more interesting than the main characters. Once again, we have another cliffhanger ending, but unfortunately this one also is not getting renewed. We're not getting a second season of Partner Track. I definitely would have been interested at least to know what happens next after that cliffhanger, but we're not getting it. So many shows, even like good and bad ones, are getting canceled left and right, so I can't say that it's too shocking that this one didn't get renewed, but I definitely would have at least wanted a second season. And then the big one that I watched that I had so many expectations for was Bridgerton season 2. If you've watched my review video, you probably know how I feel about this one, and that was not great. I don't even remember the rating that I gave it, but I'm just gonna settle on a 2 stars, maybe 2.5, just because I do love the actors and actresses in this series, in this season, but I just could not deal with the direction that the story took with this season. They were so faithful, or at least like 95% faithful to the book in the first season, but then here in the second season, it's like they took this wrong curve and they didn't know how to go back to the right direction, so they're just going on their own merry way, which would have been fine if I knew about it going in, but when I have certain expectations and it's not met, it's definitely disappointing. And it's especially disappointing because this is Kate's romance, and Kate is my favorite heroine in the Bridgerton series. She is so fantastic and I love her, and I do love how the actress portrayed her, but I just felt bad that they excluded so many things that made her character so special. So I am sad about the direction that they took with the second season and for the rest of the series, but now that I know that they're doing their own thing, I feel like I can enjoy it a lot more now. I'll see it as something separate from the books, and if you do that going into the second season, if you haven't watched it yet, it's probably going to be a lot more enjoyable. Moving on to the next adaptation, which is one of the worst that I watched this year. It's Purple Hearts. It's an adaptation from this super random book that I had never heard of by Tess Wakefield. It's from 2017 and it's not even a popular book, so how or why this book got adapted, I will never understand. The story was god awful. Oh my god, there were so many problematic things that happened in this movie that were just brushed off. And the sad thing is that the story itself does sound somewhat interesting. It's a marriage of convenience between a soldier and a girl who can't afford her diabetes medicine, so that's why she marries this guy, for the money and for the benefits. It's mutually beneficial. They both do get money and they have to, you know, pretend that their marriage is real to everyone, including the government. But my god, this guy was so freaking awful. He couldn't stop calling her like a liberal Nazi in every other line. He's either calling her that or a feminist or a feminazi in the most derogatory way ever. It's like, okay, we get it. We get that you think she's a man-hating bitch and she hates the military and everything that it stands for, and obviously he gets defensive because he's literally a soldier, which is understandable, but they were just so awful. I literally didn't understand how they fell for each other. I especially didn't understand how she fell for him because he was such a dick to her constantly. And that one scene where they were at some lunch celebrating their wedding with his friends, and one of his soldier friends, said this awful racial slur, and she, the heroine, the main character, she called him out for it. And all her new husband did was tell her to sit the fuck down. It was like, so what if my friend said something racist? Don't ruin this lunch with my friends, okay? That part pretty much sealed this as a 1-star movie for me. It was so bad. Like, yes, I'm sure things can get a little bit complicated when you're trying to make a military related movie, but you honestly could not have gone in a worse way than with this one. Moving on from that mess, I did finally watch Heartstopper, which it took me forever to watch this for some reason. Like, I watched the first episode and I really liked it, but it just took me forever to watch the rest of the episodes. But I adore the series. I'm giving it 4 stars. It's based off a graphic novel series, which I haven't read. I don't read YA. I never really got into graphic novels, but I have seen like the artwork from it and I did think it was really cute, and I loved how they incorporated some of the graphic novel elements into the series, into the show. This is an MMYA romance. We have one of the characters, he is gay and he's out and he gets bullied over it at school, and he falls for one of his classmates, one of his older classmates, who becomes one of his best friends. He thinks he's straight, but it turns out because of this friendship with the main character, he becomes curious about himself, and it was just so sweet and heartfelt. These two were adorable together. We get this great cast of supporting characters, all of their best friends, even the parents are wonderful. So I really like these characters. I really like the romance, and this time we are getting a season 2 here. This show did get renewed. I remember they just finished filming season 2 recently, so we might get a 2023 release for it, and I definitely will be watching. I also watched Vampire Academy. This one I was a little nervous about because I did watch the movie that came out years ago, and they did not do a great job with it. I remember cringing a lot when I watched, but they did make a new show out of it with a completely new cast and everything. They also did change up the storyline, but it's been forever since I last read Vampire Academy. I mean, I love the series. It was one of my favorite paranormal romance, YA romance series that I read, but I don't remember anything that happened except for the big Dimitri parts, because yes, I was definitely in love with Dimitri, but unless I'm remembering things wrong, I feel like they did change things up quite a bit, especially with the whole royalty storyline. I don't remember Lissa being, you know, the queen or whatever being so big in the books, but I did like the cast here. They were so much better than the movie, but then again, anyone would have been better than the movie. The actor for Dimitri, it did take me a little while, but eventually I did warm up to him, except for the very end. Oh my god, he did something very annoying that dropped this show for me from 4 stars to 3.5. I'm still mad about what he did, but his actor was interesting. He has an accent because Dimitri is Russian, but it feels like every other episode he has a slightly different accent. Like he couldn't pinpoint the right accent for Dimitri, but it's fine. I just thought it was funny. It didn't bother me or anything. The actresses for Rose and Lissa were great. I thought they were fun, and I feel like the show added a lot more side characters, or at least a lot more story to these side characters. But overall, the show wasn't too bad for an adaptation of one of my favorite series. I think it's because I had such low expectations that I was able to enjoy this one. When you go in with low expectations, you can be pleasantly surprised. And it definitely helps to have low expectations when they decide to change quite a bit from the book. I didn't mind it so much here compared to Bridgerton, just because, again, they tried the first time with that awful movie and failed, and it's like, you can do whatever you want now, just don't completely ruin it. And they didn't, thankfully. I mean, I didn't completely love it, but it was fun to watch. I would have loved seeing more of Rose and Dimitri together, but that's just me being a romance reader. I will say, if you're curious about this one, I would try it. I just wouldn't expect this to be completely faithful to the books. I also watched the new Persuasion movie on Netflix with Dakota Johnson. This movie got so many people heated. It was kind of hilarious. So many people were pissed at this movie, and I guess I can see why, but I really liked it. I'm giving it 4 stars. Persuasion is my favorite Jane Austen book. I mean, I've only read like 3 of her books, but it is my favorite. It's the OG second chance romance. Wentworth's Letter is absolute perfection for me, and I was excited to see this new take on this story. And I think the reason why this one worked for me was just because I didn't expect it to be completely faithful to the book, because it's already had a million adaptations. I don't really care about another movie being, you know, an exact copy of the other adaptations. I want something unique and different. And for me, this one did deliver. It was fun and silly. It had the whole like breaking the fourth wall thing. I thought Dakota Johnson did well here with her humor, her deadpan humor. It just worked for me, even though it didn't for quite a lot of people. I will say Wentworth, his character, his actor could have been a little bit better. He was just very underwhelming compared to Dakota, but I did think the reunion was really fun. It had me laughing out loud at some parts. It was just a silly and lighthearted take on Persuasion, and I really liked it. Another historical romance-ish movie that I watched was Lady Chatterley's Lover. I have never read this book. I have no plans to ever read it, but obviously from the title, you know what the story is about. It's about a married woman who has an affair, and I honestly did not expect it to have a happily ever after at the end. I don't know why I didn't expect it, but it did. This one was interesting to watch. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I didn't really love the chemistry between Lady Chatterley and her lover, mostly because the way they started their affair was so abrupt. Like, it just happened all of a sudden, and I was like, whoa, where did this come from? We're here already? There is a good amount of steam. There is quite a lot of thrusting here. But the story itself, it was okay. It's a little simple, you know, it's just a married woman who falls in love with someone who's not her husband and leaves him for her lover. So it was fine. I mean, when I find something average, I don't have that much to say about it. It's not the worst adaptation that I watched this year, but it's definitely not the best. For my next adaptation, it's another historical one. I didn't realize that there were so many that I watched this year, but maybe it's an effect of Bridgerton. I watched Mr. Malcolm's List, which is based on the book by Suzanne Allain. I have not read this book. I didn't plan to read it, and I definitely don't want to read it after watching this movie. It's a historical romance, an actual historical romance based off a historical romance book, and it was one of the most boring movies that I have ever watched. The story moved so slowly, and the characters were so underwhelming. There was no excitement, no spice, nothing to make these characters all that interesting. Honestly, I started tuning out while I was watching this because it was not gripping me. The story itself is about this guy, Mr. Malcolm, who is a very popular bachelor. Everyone wants him except for the heroine. And I feel like they could have had so much fun with this kind of story, but it was so unbelievably boring. I would highly recommend skipping this one. There's nothing you're gonna miss if you don't watch it. I only paid 99 cents for this movie. Thank God I did not pay full price for this because I would have been pissed. Oh yeah, my rating, 2 stars. For this next adaptation, I don't know if it really counts, but I feel like I saw somewhere that it was based on a book, so I'm including it here. And I just wanted an excuse to talk about this one because of how much I love it. I watched Enola Holmes season 2 and I freaking loved it. Am I surprised? Not at all, because of how much I adored the first season. The second season was perfection. I loved it, 5 stars. I think I loved it even more just because we do get more romance here. Tewksbury and Enola are the most adorable thing together, and we do get more of Henry Cavill here. We get more of Sherlock this time. He's not just a supporting character. I mean, he is, but he gets more of a forefront into the story. He gets to be an actual big brother here. Enola is fantastic, just like the first season. Millie Bobby Brown plays her so well. This series just has the best cast. I love all the characters and their actors and actresses. And the story here for the second season was actually based on a real historical event about this group of women who fight for their workers' rights. It just had everything that I wanted, that I expected, and it just went beyond my expectations. I had so much fun watching this one. If you haven't watched the series, if you haven't watched any of the Enola Holmes movies, do it. You will not regret it. And then my final 2022 adaptation that I watched before I get into my last older adaptations is Love and Gelato. This is based on a YA book by Jenna Evans Welch. This one came out in 2016, so it's a little newer compared to some of the other books that got adapted this year. I stopped reading YA in like 2014, 2015, so this was after my YA days. I haven't read it. It's basically another YA summer romance, but this time set in Italy, and it was kind of cringy to watch. The acting was not the best. The love triangle was okay. It was just a little bit too obvious that one guy was so much better than the other. I did like how the movie ended though. That was a nice touch, but the acting was mainly the reason why I didn't really like this one that much. I'm giving it 2.5 stars. Like, I tried, it just wasn't that great. And then the last 2 movies that I watched are the older releases. This first one I knew I was not gonna like, but I didn't realize how bad it was gonna be. But I finally watched After We Fell. I watched the first 2 movies ages ago and never continued until now, and I kind of wish I didn't. This was so bad. I just don't understand these characters at all. I don't understand the decisions that they make. Hardin and Tessa are just not good together, but it was a hate watch, so I can't really complain that much because I knew I wasn't gonna like it. I'm probably gonna end up hate watching the next movie or however many movies there are left whenever they come to Netflix, because I'm definitely not gonna go to theaters to watch these, but I am curious enough to still want to know what happens at the end. But this one, if you couldn't tell, this was a 1-star movie for me. And then my final movie, this one I actually completely forgot existed. I forgot this book turned into a movie. It's Can You Keep a Secret, which is based on the book by Sophie Kinsella, which I actually did love back in the day, which is why I'm surprised that I forgot this movie existed. But at the same time, no one was talking about it anyway, and that's most likely why I didn't watch it until now. I was just scrolling on Netflix and I was like, oh wait, this became a movie. It did, and it wasn't exactly the best. I can now understand why no one was talking about it. Even though I love the book, the movie itself was slightly boring. It was a little cringy to watch, but I think it was supposed to be that way. It is a rom-com. It's a silly rom-com. We have a main character who talks to her neighbor on an airplane about these very private things because she thinks she's about to die, and then it turns out that guy is none other than her boss. So yes, a little cringy with how awkward she is. The actual romance, I wasn't feeling it. There was no chemistry, or at least it felt very forced, but it wasn't terrible. It was just underwhelming compared to how much I love the book. And so I'll just give this one 3 stars. But that's it for all the adaptations that I watched, all the book to screen adaptations that I watched this year. There are a couple of 2023 releases that I'm very looking forward to. Obviously, It's Not Summer Without You. I need the 2nd season. I'm hoping we're gonna get the sequel to Sex Life in 2023. This is the book that doesn't actually exist by B.B. Easton. I am absolutely gonna watch the 2nd season of Shadow and Bone. I'm very excited because I really liked the 1st season, mostly because of Ben Barnes, but I did really like it. Bridgerton season 3, we're getting Colin and Penelope's romance, even though it should be Benedict, but we're skipping things around and I'm just gonna let them do whatever they want to do and enjoy it for what it is. There's gonna be a movie adaptation with Sam Heughan and I am 100% watching it because of him. It's based on a book called Text for You, but the movie itself is getting a different title. It has a very interesting premise. It's about a woman who sends texts to her late fiance's phone and she ends up talking to the guy who now has that number. We're also getting that Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. A couple other books that might be getting adaptations next year. I think they're in production. I just don't know if they're coming in 2023 exactly, but we are getting Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, which I do eventually want to read. I just don't actually like any of the Beth O'Leary books that I've read. The Perfect Find by Tia Williams. I've only read one Tia Williams book. It was not this one, but I did really like it, so I'll probably eventually get to this one. There's gonna be an Uglies movie or series. I don't know which one they're doing, but this is based on the Scott Westerfield book, which I read many years ago, back when dystopian was such a big thing. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green is also becoming a movie, and then this last one I am so excited for. I just don't know when it's coming. It's the new Percy Jackson series. I was obsessed with the Percy Jackson books back in middle school. I really have so much nostalgia for that series, so hopefully we do get the adaptation, this new adaptation, soon. But that's it for all the book to screen adaptations that I watched in 2022. Let me know your thoughts, as always, if you have watched any of these movies or TV shows. If you're excited about any upcoming ones, let me know. I specifically didn't include any passion flick stuff just because I'm not ready to dive into that hole. I don't know if I'll ever be ready, to be honest, but yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts and my ratings on these movies and shows. If you're curious about the books that these were based on, I'll link everything down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.